Well, thank you everyone for supporting me in the ways that you have for so many years at Unity of Payson and at Interfaith Community. I have an interesting story. And a couple of weeks ago, a very dear brother friend of mine that many of you know, Jay Steinberg, asked me to share, and this is a quote, "some food for thought, anything inspirational," he said, "but something new." Well, I took a deep breath, quietly considering all that was and still is going on in my world and in our world today. And then I responded, and I felt as though I was doing so gently. I said, "I'm going to have to think about that, Jay." He smiled and said, "Okay, later." And of course, what had happened, he had opened my heart mind. I may not have been aware of it in that moment, but he had. And the very next day, I went to Oasis, which many of you know is my very favorite coffee place in Phoenix. I had a good visit with the owners and left smiling with a hot cup of ginger coffee. But I had noticed that a new business had opened up just down the way, so I walked over in that direction. And unexpectedly, a fellow came around the corner and bumped into me. Yes, the coffee was spilled. Yes, the coffee was hot. Yes, I got it. And so was I hot. My reaction. Later that afternoon, I opened up Facebook, and a page I'd never seen before, a coffee business page, showed up. And they had a writing that they said was attributed to Thich Nhat Hanh. Well, Thich Nhat Hanh, I'm going to read it. It wasn't there by accident, right? No, it was not. And I'll quote, "You're holding a cup of coffee." Now, all of you know I hold a lot of cups of coffee during my day. I'll begin again. You're holding a cup of coffee when someone comes along and bumps into you or shakes your arm, making you spill your coffee everywhere. Why did you spill the coffee? Because somebody bumped into me. Wrong answer. You spilled the coffee because there was coffee in your cup. Had there been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea. Whatever is inside the cup will spill out. Therefore, when life comes along and shakes you, which will happen, whatever is inside you will come out. It's easy to fake it until you get rattled. So we have to ask ourselves, what's in my cup? When life gets tough, what spills over? Joy, gratefulness, peace, humility, open-mindedness, anger, bitterness, harsh words, and reactions. Life provides the cup. You choose how to fill it. Now, in all honesty, I was not surprised. These kind of things, they happen. And I'm grateful that I'm aware of them. Remember, Jay had asked. I heard him. And Holy Spirit had heard him as well. And also heard me. My reluctance to look within and share in learning and teaching. Jay heard it. I spoke it. Holy Spirit heard it. Then, of course, on Facebook, of all places, shared a little bit of a wake-up call for me. It really did, along with the gentleman that had bumped into me. Do you believe in divine order? How can you not with this story, right? Well, honestly, the wake-up call brought me to attention. I woke up, accepting the message. Within 2 days, I had received the inspiration Jay had asked for Now, the thing about it is, sometimes when we're asked to take another step forward, to look at things differently, we have to give ourselves permission to recognize a bit of time, a bit of distress, a bit of discomfort, a bit of surprise will happen, and we will take that step forward. We may need to do some soul searching to uncover where and when our ego had caused us to hesitate to think, to hesitate to speak, to hesitate to act, to hesitate, as I did with Jay, to be truly helpful. We must be aware of our thoughts and our actions, and we have to make a commitment to accept our positive power and connection with our inner wisdom. It doesn't go anywhere. However, we often allow distraction, fear, and self-judgment, as I did that day, to hesitate. I considered myself too busy in thought and mind and work. And I will admit that that combination of events that happened in 2 days prompted me to do a little bit of soul searching. I'm going to ask you, do you constantly remind yourself that you are loved? That you were created in the image of God? Perfect in every way? In divine sight? I will admit that I try to do so and often do. However, as you know, I'm a pretty honest person. I'm not 100% successful at it. Why? Because like most of us, we have lived based on the conditioning of the ego in the material world. Our daily thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, our outward appearances are who we are. I really had to take a look at that again. Remember, ego defined as edging God out. Wayne Dyer's explanation of the ego is really worthwhile. It's simple. Well, it's simple, but in many ways we question it. I understand that. But what he says are 6 different things. The ego, I am what I have. The ego, I am what I do. I am what other people think of me. I am separate from everybody else. I am separate from what's missing in my life. I am separate from God. Whew. What the ego says is fake news, folks. Fake news to the utmost. It's not true. Never has been. Never can be. And we are so much more than what we think, what the ego makes us believe, or what other people think of us. The ego is literally a fearful thought. The ego is the idea that we are either better than or worse than. It tells us that we are not good enough or they are not good enough. The ego is separation, separate from others, separate from God. It has no sense of unity, no sense of equality, no sense of being at one with each other, no sense of one human race. It's really important for us to pause and take that in again. And not just today, but again and again, because the ego doesn't accept or even know that we are all related, all loved, and never alone. Since the ego lives in thoughts of fear, it tells us that there is never enough of anything. There's not enough time, which I bought into. There's not enough money. There's certainly not enough love. That we have to overwork, that we have to outdo, that we have to outmaneuver and outmanipulate because the ego is never satisfied. No matter what we attain, the ego, like Mick Jagger said, can't get no satisfaction. When plan A doesn't work, we try plan A harder. To quote Albert Einstein, insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And all the while we keep wondering, why are we still unhappy? Why are we dissatisfied? Why have we really experienced being miserable, downright miserable? Living a life based in fearful thoughts of the ego is going to give us very negative opportunities and results. On the other hand, we can act kind. We can act generous, self-sacrificing. Yes, we can. However, do we have an underlying motive of getting what we want out of that situation? I mean, sometimes we're not even aware of what we are doing. But if looked at closely, we'll see a thought like, if I'm just nice enough, or I'm just kind enough, or maybe sacrifice enough, then I can get them to like me. I can get them to admire me. I hate to think it, but you and I know that is something that we have all tripped into. I'm not saying we are still consistent with it, but it still happens. Now, of course, we can be authentically kind and loving and tolerant. It's only by listening to our ego that kindness in any form becomes conditional, based on what we want in return. To give with no expectation, to give with no expectation of results is the spirit, which is love, which is the truth, which is love, which is being truly helpful. So, what's the solution? It's not much. It's just a miracle. Don't panic. Miracles are natural. They're normal. They occur every day. Yes, A Course in Miracles teaches them, and I'm grateful for that. A Course says that a miracle is a change of perception, a new way of seeing things, a new pair of glasses. Yes, a spiritual experience. The solution is to accept and commit to our connection within our God, and we will see things differently and experience a miracle. The only chance ego, mortal mind, or fake news has at influencing anything is when we believe in it or when we accept it. We must not allow ourselves to be so conned. And we begin by no longer being deceived by the ego's sneaky ways and subtle innuendos. We focus on our truth instead, even when we slip, as I shared earlier. I did slip. It has taken time of self-reflection and spiritual study for me to begin to understand the truth of who I am, a spiritual being having a human experience. Yes, as Unity teaches, I am an expression of God on earth. I am divine in my essence. I am never separate from God. And you and I are never separate from each other within our God. We are, as said a million times in 1,000 ways, spiritual beings, precious, loved, never alone. And deep at the center of my being is that infinite well of love. And when I allow this love to flow to the surface, It is my choice to accept the love and know it fills my cup. That very cup that is my heart, that is my body, my mind, my consciousness, my very being. And it radiates out from me in all direction and returns to me multiplied. The more love I use and share, the more I have. The blessings of happiness, peace, healing, and freedom. Yes, joy. I do have a commitment to open my spiritual toolbox daily and use those tools, particularly practicing meditation and affirmative prayer. And yes, sometimes I think that I can and will be distracted, just like I was with Jay. However, when that happens, we remind ourselves that we are loved, that we're open to the guidance and the direction of Holy Spirit. We remind ourselves that we are created in the image of our God, perfect in every way in His sight. We've tried to live our lives based on the notion that the ego, our daily thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, our outward appearances are who we are. Let's let it go. We're always loved. We're never alone. And deep at the center of my being, there's an infinite well of love. That's all the truth. I allow that love to flow to the surface. It fills my heart, my body, my mind, my consciousness, my very being, and radiates. The more love I use, the more love I give, the more I have to use and to give, because that supply is endless. Marianne Williamson, in her book, A Return to Love, says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Yes, that is true. We have to give ourselves permission to choose to fill our cup with God's love. And now it is filled with gratitude. It is filled with forgiveness, joy, words of affirmation and kindness, gentleness, and love for others. And we must give ourselves permission to recognize how important that is for us. Yes, together we can hold a vision that our cup is always filled with the good, the beautiful, and the holy, that we are. And so it is.